What's up, girls? I just read George Orwell's 1946 essay entitled Why I Write. Um, Very cool, interesting essay that I think every writer should read. He first kind of talks about his childhood, that he was a little bit of a lonely child, talked to imaginary friends, wanted some audience in which he could express himself to, and he thinks that really helped form kind of the type of person that he was, and then he always had, an inkling that he wanted to be a writer. Up until he was 18 or so, he kind of repressed that urge and then circled back around to it at age 25. And then he eventually published his first novel, Burmese Days, at age 30. He talks about how his first novel was this kind of long and very negative, what's wrong with the world kind of novel, which I thought was very funny because both of those things are the two things they teach you not to do in film school, and I imagine if you get an MFA in creative writing or something, it's probably the same. But when you're screenwriting, they're basically teaching you how to be as quick and precise as possible, especially in film, because each second is so cost intensive, basically. But there is also this, I think it's at a Sid Fields example, where he's talking about he would prompt a class of 30 to write a short story or a short screenplay, and basically 28 out of 30 of the scripts would be really negative and have tragic endings where the protagonist dies or something. And in film specifically, they want you to end movies with a happy ending because it's the last thing that the audience remembers about the movie, and they want you to they want them to leave the theater with a positive feeling, basically, so that the word of mouth is better, and they tell people, oh yeah, I love this movie, blah blah blah. I really believe in positive endings for other non-financial reasons, though. I think a lot of stories you can write are basically the same up until the ending, and then I think the ending can sometimes be just a reflection of the author's viewpoints of whether or not they're hopeful or wish to spread hope, positivity, optimism, or not. And I think more and more contemporary novels are just kind of they take this bleak stance of everything's pointless. Oh my God, it's post-capitalism. Oh, there's so many atrocities in the world. How can we, how do you even live? And it's just, I always read those and I'm just kind of bummed out after, and I'm like, why did I read this? Even if it, sometimes they say some interesting things that I feel I learn a little bit, but I'm also I think you also read literature to kind of calibrate your mood and viewpoints. So it almost feels a little bit immoral to me sometimes when a book just creates a bleak ending that seems pointless. Anyway, that's a big aside. In Orwell's essay, he writes that a writer will write for one of 4 reasons, and some combination of these 4 reasons. The first being sheer egoism. You basically want to show off, be I have mastered the English language in this way. I'm able to articulate myself in this way. I'm clever, blah blah blah. I feel that's probably true for any, and he says this as well, any individualistic pursuit past a certain age. You've got to really want it for yourself. Part 2, or the second reason, was for aesthetics and beauty of the word, wanting to share an experience with someone who's reading the book that they might otherwise not be able to experience. I think this is a big one. I was thinking about something similar to this recently because I read the book Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, and he's basically, the takeaway from the book is that in your life, the truest form of knowledge basically has to be experiential knowledge, because you can't really exist out of your own subjective experience. And I almost feel like reading books sometimes can be a little bit of a hack for that. Like, you almost get to experience what's happening in the book. If it's a good book and you think it's true and, you know, it resonates with you on a certain level, it almost feels like lived experience, even though it's not quite. So the third reason people write is for like historical records, basically, just to try to get down on paper what's going on in the world as you're living. And 4 was for political motivations. Obviously, because it's George Orwell, like, he's a political writer. He writes in this essay. Later in his writing career, his whole purpose for writing basically became to be anti-totalitarianism regime and pro-democratic socialism, which culminates in Animal Farm and then 1984 at the end of his life. This essay was written before he had written 1984, but I think he'd been working on it for a while, and then he passed away shortly after he finished it. And he basically says all art is political, even the stance that art is not political is in itself a political stance. Very smart, kind of meta argument there. But, you know, I think it's so true. He has this other part of the essay where he kind of reflects on like an artist or like a writer being a product of their time, what's going on culturally. And I think that's totally true. I think as a writer, there's like a weird kind of thing that you have to learn. And this was true for when I wanted to make movies as well. It's like the movies that got me interested in making movies because they were so good are a little bit before my time. And you kind of want to, you know, recreate those similar movies that have already been made and exist in kind of like a past culture that's already kind of gone. And so I think kind of early in my writing career, I was like a little bit in friction with that concept because, you know, I was like, no, I want to make Entourage or like Californication, all these kind of cool early 2000s, 2010s, everything's good, everything's a little bit like indulgent shows or movies, you know, that I grew up watching and what got me into filmmaking. It's interesting because like those movies don't exist in the culture today, and I'm writing in the culture today. So it's almost like I think you have to be kind of tuned into the world and treat the like current problems that we're trying to decipher as almost like an artistic inheritance, you know, whether you kind of like it or not. And it's strange because I think then your like job as a writer becomes quite passive. It's almost like you just need to be keyed into your environment and observing, and then again you kind of wait for a creative idea to come along, or you know, you learn a lot about a subject that's currently going on and form an opinion about it, and then kind of transcribe that to you know, novelistic prose or whatever. And it's not quite that black and white. It's not like there's like a process like that. It's usually kind of the idea comes to you because you're existing within the culture, and you know, it's almost like you start writing before you even realize what you're doing, and then kind of after the fact, retroactively, you're like, oh, that makes sense why I was caught up on this idea, because I'm going through this. This is reflective of, you know, other problems people are having or other things people are going through. But yeah, that's really more my thoughts on why I write, along with Orwell's thoughts on why he writes.